we're not going to be live right now. So this will be uploaded on YouTube. Hi, YouTube now. We do that with our meetings typically. We record them. We try to live stream them, etc. But so you can watch all of the Express Technical Committee meetings on YouTube, which we'll try to bring a link up to that because I think it's on the, it doesn't matter. I'm getting into other things. But what was your question, Glenn? Oh yeah, Repo Captain stuff. So can I go through let me go through a little bit of a framing spiel that I have basically to try to add to what he's saying. So yeah, like Glenn said, basically, we're just people that have been involved in the triage since the beginning. This whole team initiative has only been around for about 6 months. We're still figuring it out. We have absolutely no idea what we're doing, but we've gone through a lot of the pain of not knowing what we're doing, and hopefully this will try to alleviate some of that, or at least orientate you in a way that took us several months to figure out. So we don't particularly have authority. We just are trying to help it be less bad for other people because this has never existed before. But so quick intro to Express, which everybody probably knows what Express is, but in the context of, hopefully if people haven't seen the talks before, I'll blow a couple of minds or something, but Express is actually 90 repos. It's about 90 different packages. That's what makes up Express. It's spread across 3 different organizations. Those orgs are they're on GitHub. The orgs are Express.js, Pillar.js, and JS-HTTP. Each org has its own focus, basically, but pretty much every piece of Express has been broken up so that other people could potentially use it. There are things in the ecosystem. So Multer, for example, is like the Express file upload middleware that a lot of people have used. That has 876,000 weekly downloads on NPM by itself. It's part of the Express umbrella. Cookie Parser is a Node.js package that is maintained by the Express team. That by itself has like 1.5 million downloads every week. Path to Reg Expression is a package that has almost 18 million downloads a week on NPM. It's technically under the Express umbrella. It's insane. It's used by 3,000 different other packages. One of the biggest ones is Express. That's what does the like path matching when you create a route, you know. We use Path to Regex, but also React Router uses it. Next uses it. A bunch of other projects use it. Happy, I think, uses it. I think Koa uses it. It's maintained technically by, well, there's one main lead maintainer, Blake Embre, but it's under the Express org, basically. So it falls under the triage mandate, essentially. So onto what Glenn was talking about project captains. That's something we're kind of starting to do now. We haven't implemented it for real, but well, let me get in. Yeah, before I get into that, who is Express? Express is technically the maintainers, which consists of the technical committee, which I think there's 4 active technical committee members currently. Excuse me, Doug Wilson is the main maintainer of Express and has been for like 4 or 5 years almost, pretty much by himself, like maintaining all these 90 repos. Blake Embre is also on the technical committee. He does Path to Regex and a couple other things are his baby, essentially. He has the say over those. Linus is the person who maintains Multer. It's pretty much his whole fief, essentially. And then Wes Todd is a gentleman who works at Netflix, and he's the newest person on the TC that I understand. And he just kind of does all kinds of stuff, but he's from the package maintenance group. So Express has like 17 million downloads, I think, no, 12 million weekly downloads. And it's essentially supported by like 1 or 2 people for the most part. And nobody is a full-time maintainer of Express. Doug has a full-time job. Nobody gets paid full-time to do Express. So that's kind of mind-blowing. At least it was to me when I found out about it, which is part of why I wanted to get involved in the triage, just to try to help. Like, you can't have one person maintaining 90 different repos, or at least it's not an ideal situation. It's been working pretty well so far, honestly, which is incredible and a testament to Doug being, I don't know how he does it. It's insane, honestly. But yeah, that's project captains are something we're trying to implement now, which will have people who've been involved in the project through triage and committing over 6 months is a number we pulled out of somewhere. People who seem committed can take over more ownership of a package. Like I don't have commit rights. I don't have write permissions on any repos. Neither does Glenn, neither does any of the triagers. We're strictly triage and we label and we close issues and we answer questions basically. So it's a good path towards becoming a committer. And right now, one of the paths we're kind of opening up or is being opened up is this Repo Captain kind of thing, where Doug is essentially like Repo Captain over all of Express. It's technically the TC, but in a lot of ways, it often does come down to Doug merging and committing things. Linus runs Multer, like I said. Blake Embray runs Path to Regex, etc. There's a gentleman named Rand who is technically the Repo Captain in charge of the Express website. He works at Mozilla these days doing documentation, and I don't think he has very much time anymore he merges the PRs. Him or Doug merge the PRs on the website basically. But so Project Captains is something we're working towards, but we're not quite there yet. So basically all this commit stuff is falling on the shoulders of essentially one person for the overarching org, with other people spread in there.
So people are raising PRs, but there are very few people supervising those commits. So as Triage, you can raise PRs, I'm doing tests, but they're not just going to hand this out willy-nilly. I mean, you've seen the number of downloads. They want to see some commitment to the project, and they want to see people staying. And from my work on some of the other committees, what we do see is people have a great deal of initial interest, and then they fathom out there's actually quite a lot of work involved. And when I volunteered for something, I volunteered because I thought it looked easy, and it wasn't.
And so I'll move on because I realize that we're going to try really hard to keep this to an hour. We're going to do it. I believe in us. But I want to move on a little bit. So what is triage? This is my admin section of things of framing. What do we mean by triage? What are the goals? Who does it help? Ultimately, the goal of triaging is to keep the community and the project itself and the community around it and within it healthy. What we do that in order to help the maintainers, which helps the users ultimately. I stress that I've said this before, triage is supposed to help the maintainers, which is a very selfish view, but I'll tell you why I put it that way. It's just a function of limited human time. Express is one of the most visible projects in the Node.js world, and it has a lot of beginners that come to it. A lot of people ask a lot of questions. We get a large volume of issues, and basically the best way, this is me talking from my perspective, not the project, the best way to serve the most people is to improve documentation and ensure the health of the project. That being said, I like to help people a lot. I enjoy it, and I spend way too much time going down rabbit holes, debugging people's apps, but I bring that up specifically so you can understand what's expected of a triager. One, we expect you to contribute your time when and how you're able. This is all volunteer work. Everybody's volunteering. If you can't make meetings, that's fine. You don't owe it to anybody. You don't need an excuse, etc.
Yeah, and John, sorry to interrupt. I just think it's important. One thing is, I've also that's not just a triage thing. I've also heard Doug and Wes and everyone across Express completely everyone's a volunteer. You do what you can. If you can't make meetings, if you have other life things going on, it happens, and it is completely fine. And that's not just triage. Yeah.
Yep. That's a very good point. That's actually a point of contention. I'm not sure. It's wild to me that Express has survived this long just on volunteer effort. It's a point of contention just more in terms of it limits a lot of what we can do because no one is on the project full time, for better or worse. But so that's a big error of everything we do, is that it's chill out. We're all volunteers. We're all doing this because we care about the ecosystem. So specifically, I framed all that way to say, you're not expected to debug. I'm yelling now. You're not expected to debug anybody else's application. What that means is you're not expected to throw time down a rabbit hole of trying to track down someone's bug if they're not able to give you good information about it. However, you're welcome to help folks however you see fit. I do encourage you to let them know up front, this doesn't seem to be a problem with Express. Have you tried X, Y, or Z? Or tell them, maybe open an issue on Stack Overflow. This is all sounding kind of user hostile, but I just want to put that out there that like it can be really time consuming to spend hours on debugging somebody's stuff and finding out that they just didn't give you a full code snippet and it's hours of your life gone. I like doing that stuff, so I kind of follow that rabbit hole, and you can actually learn a lot that way, and you can see a lot of opportunities to improve documentation. So do it if you want, but that's not expected. It's not expected at all, basically. So I'll take a quick break, and if anybody else wants to add anything right now, but we can also touch on what you actually do as a triager and also how to find things to do. But I just wanted to kind of frame a lot of that stuff, before we get into anything else.
So I'll give you an example of a sort of a classic newbie question I had to do. I'm just going to put it in the Slack. I mean, it's public, so if you click on that, it's a classic. My app doesn't work. Can you fix it for me? They don't say that. They never say that. What they say is Express is broken. It must be broken because my app doesn't work. And I was a bit harsher than I usually am today. Sometimes I'm very gentle, but today I was tired. And I said, it looks like your package.json is broken. And I closed it. I just said, give me something more than a screenshot. This is kind of classic. My app doesn't work, it's broken. Sometimes they're actually harder. Here's an example of another one a few days ago. Somebody was running an app and it had a script tag in it, and the script tag was calling the page again a second time. So it had 2 hits every time. In the end, I just masked out script tags till it stopped happening and said it's that one. You don't have to do that. You can say, just give me a working example of demonstrates how something is broken. And you may not be able to do anything other than label it as a question. You can go in onto the issue and you can label it question. And then usually the next thing you do is awaiting further information. If they actually respond, and that cuts out 75% of people who, and I'll tell you why in a second, then if you don't know the answer, somebody else will pick it up. Doug will pick it up if it looks interesting. Somebody will pick it up. But mostly what I found is people post questions in Stack Overflow, another repo, and Express at the same time, hoping someone will fix their broken app. That is not our job, as John has just said, to fix someone's website or tool or something. Usually we can see straight away with a newbie what they're doing wrong, but it's not our job. Well, our job is to protect Express. What we're trying to do is keep the number of issues and questions under control. If people raise PRs, which is rarer, then we look at them and we can try them out and we can label them and comment them. And then Doug, the maintainer, will pick them up and decide whether to merge them because he has commit rights and he'll be doing that role. And that is the role that we wish for the triagers to pick up as they mature. I picked up the Express session repo because I thought it sounded easy, and then I discovered it wasn't as easy as I hoped. It's the old JavaScript. It uses prototypes. Yeah, liberal sprinkling, yep. Nothing but vars and stuff. So you've got to make of this what you can. It's up to you what your contribution level is. But start off just by what we really do need is we need to set up some sort of schedule, or you can just see as items come in on any of the repos. There's so many repos. I just monitor 2. You can just pick items up and interact with the people raising issues, because that keeps the community healthy and vibrant. And don't feel bad at closing an issue when you say, give me an example, and it doesn't come. I just close it in 24 hours. If they're interested, they'll reply with information and I'll reopen it again. I'm quite happy. I usually say I'll reopen it if you respond. But our job is not to help people going through boot camp. It's to be gentle with them. But our main role to begin with is to build up this ecosystem, to get people to own some of these repos, maintain them, take an interest in them, and eventually we'd like an off-ramp. So like you'd have an off-ramp, you have I feel good off-ramp. You may want to pick up other projects, and within the OpenJS Foundation, you'll recognize all of the badges, the web packs, the amps, the ESLints, so forth that they have in there. Even things that you don't really know are in the foundation, like NVM for loading different versions of Node, I discovered is in there too. It's part of the foundation, yeah. So there are many different things. And what we just want to do is if we can get you interested in and onboarded to the community, you'll eventually mature and pick up things and move on to other greater things. Perhaps you can start writing your own code. But one of the biggest issues we have is the weight of the ecosystem and people's lives are changing. They have families, they have life changes, they get promoted at work, they can no longer do this thing. And we find, like some of these packages with millions of downloads might be ghosted, meaning there's no visible maintainer responding anymore. And that's what we want to avoid, the ghosting. We want to be vibrant and answer. Back to you, John.
Yeah, and so the reason we're stressing what you don't have to do, et cetera, is specifically like what Glenn says, which is if you do choose to triage and you do choose to keep it up, or if you like it and you want to stick to it, you get to set your own commitment level. We mention all this crazy stuff about what you don't need to do, because I'm going to show you some things in a little bit. I'm going to share my screen if I can at some point and kind of walk you through a little bit of what it looks like when I'm triaging. And I get burnt out sometimes. I spend a decent amount of time doing this stuff. My job actually gives me time to do open source, and I've chosen to spend some time doing this with Express. But even still, it can be overwhelming, like extremely overwhelming. And at first, I kind of just would spend a lot of time doing things that I realized later, I should have just closed the issue and asked the person, can you send me a reproduction? And if not, it's not users' fault. It's just specifically about learning how to guard my own time. I love open source and I like helping people, like I said, but I didn't know what was expected of me. So I was giving full service, several $100s an hour worth of tech support for free for people that would never come back, basically. And I was like, why do I do this? But I do it for the community and stuff. So yeah, Ryan?
I was just going to say, Express is everyone here has written JavaScript and Node, and Express is one of the first places that people go to who are new to doing backend development with JavaScript and new to Node in general. A lot of people go to Express before they even check out the Node docs, right? And so a lot of these issues are with people who arrived here and are brand new to programming. And so like John said, you have to balance. If you're someone who wants to naturally help someone, you can go down that road. And I think that's a great thing to do. And it is a great way to get familiar. But you've got to always remember, there's Stack Overflow, there's an Express Getter, there's other places people can go to for help. And it can be a GitHub issue. But a lot of times it is just someone who's brand new to programming. You got to always remember that.
Yep. And that's fine. It's not that user's fault. I don't think I've opened very few GitHub issues ever asking anyone for help. So I respect people that are brave enough to ask for help. It's pretty cool, actually. But the point is that there are great resources out there, and we can point people to those, and that's fine. If they have something specifically that has to do with Express or something that's broken with Express, that's exactly what we're here for. And if not, then we can send them somewhere else. Basically, that hey, learn about promises. Say it in a nice way, but this actually is an issue with promises. You should go check that out. Here's some links if you're feeling generous, or you can just say, hey, this doesn't have anything to do with Express. I'm going to close this for now. You're welcome to, if you have a problem with Express or you realize it is a problem with Express, we can always reopen it. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about, now we've warned you. So what is triaging? What do we even do? What do we mean? Well, one of the big things is, actually, I'm going to try to see if I can share my screen. God, I have to pick a window. Oh no. Which one? How do I do? I've never done this. I should have figured this out. Oh, here we go. Yeah. Share this one.
Good job.
Cool. Can you see this? You can see this, right?
Mhm.
You can see I'm highlighting what to do. Can you see that?
We do. We see
Is
it.
it highlighted?
Yep.
I think you picked the right one.
I did pick the right one. Okay, good. So first touch maintenance is one of the first things that triaging is typically. I'll show you a little bit about what that actually looks like. Let me go through my scary tabs. So yeah, first touch maintenance. I'll talk about this later. This is my helpful links and workflow stuff. This is a link to all unlabeled issues sorted by newest across all 3 orgs, across 90 repos. So this is a issue that just came in from Master Matt. So I'm seeing now that, oh, this is an unlabeled issue. I can go and I can add a label to it. I'm not going to, there's nothing for me to label here, but that's just an example. Basically.
Actually, Doug's already taking care of this. This could be closed.
There you go. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about Doug is, man, is he fast.
Yeah.
So how to push an image, I haven't looked at this before. How to push an image to Multer middleware. So this is in Multer. I'm not even going to read this, but I know it's a question. So I had a question. Boom. I could go further if I wanted, and I could read it. I have a route which get image by URL from client sent to server. How can I push this image to Multer middleware in order to save image? Because I had a route which save image sent from client. I don't understand this at first read, so I'm going to bounce. That's a first touch. There you go. That's it. Somebody else can now look for issues labeled question, and they can answer that question if they're in a question answering mood. That's one example of first touch. I'll get back to my thing. Yeah, so labeling or asking for more context or even answering someone's question, which ideally would be pointing folks to documentation. Why do I say ideally? Because if we've done a good job, then we should have documentation to answer that question. If not, we can always answer the question. That's fine. We can do that. But so that's an example of first touch. So we get lots of issues. Multer is one of the most active repos in the org, and it gets probably like 20 issues a week, maybe here and there. But you multiply that. Some repos don't get any issues. There's only like maybe 10 repos that actively get issues, but they get a lot of them pretty often. So closing stagnant issues is an example of triaging. If there's been no response for a while from the opener for several weeks, is it actionable or is it actionable? I.e., can I do anything with this issue? Is it intelligible? Sometimes things are opened up by accident. We just close it. I have another example. Oh, get out of there. Get out of there.
Have there been discussions on using Stalebot for stagnant issues?
Yes, we've talked about it in a discussion. I think we decided against it for right now. I can show you if I can get into my helpful links. Let's look at all open issues. I'm going to go to that. It's just one of the links that I have. I'm going to sort it by oldest. We have issues from the originator of the project. This probably is stale, and we can probably get rid of this, honestly. But we have so many issues that are just, this is from 2011. I didn't close this because apparently I don't have permissions on this repo. There's a couple of odd repos where triagers don't have permissions. We should get that fixed. Otherwise, this would be a really good reason to close it. We talked about Stalebot and we haven't made a decision. There's a discussion. There's an Express.js in this actual repo where the meeting was posted. You can look for it and there's a discussion about Stalebot. I forget what the arguments were, but I think we decided to just try to let humans do it for now, which may change. That's kind of stuff's always open for debate. Man, I've got this. How do I move the control thing? Oh, there we go. I can move it. What I actually wanted to show you was, it doesn't really matter. I have another fancy link that just shows you like really old issues that are tagged with a waiting for information. You can close those sometimes, etc. I'm kind of just showing off with my links. That's not important right now. But closing stagnant issues, I break these things up in this way because for me it helps to like have a mode where today I'm in first issue maintenance mode. I have 10 minutes to do that. Or closing stagnant issues, or investigating bugs. It's one of my favorite ones. We get a lot of bug reports that aren't bugs, but you never know. You gotta try to ask somebody to give you more information. Like getting a reproduction or attempting the reproduction yourself. if you do, there are some bugs that are open. They usually get closed pretty quickly, but the things that have bug label should be actual bugs, which have been reproduced. We need to fix our labels so we have better labels so we can better see the differences there. But so those are the three big things I see. This is, again, just my opinion. And finally, lending your opinions on PRs. There's like a whole other sub list I have of what that means. But a lot of PRs do get opened. Sometimes they're typos. Sometimes they're unsolicited features, I would call them. Think people want to change something, and then you need to ask them like, okay, why? Like, what's your intent here? Why? Why'd you do this way, et cetera? But as a triager, you're always welcome to chime in and review PRs. You're always welcome to do that.
Yeah. John, I just want to chime in with one thing on the PR.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that I've done myself, and I've seen, John, maybe I think you might have done this, or I've seen other people do this, is there's also on top of issues, there's also sometimes a lot of, someone will come to Express maybe a few years ago to one of the repos in the org, and they'll open a PR for something that was generally agreed upon to be a pretty good idea. And due to the slow-moving nature of the Express project in general, maybe the PR review from the maintainer didn't move as fast as that person would like. And maybe they were working on that PR because they needed something for their job or something, and then they moved on. And there's a lot of stale PRs as well. And so if you're interested in getting a bit more involved with code, one kind of nice way to do that is to look through some of these old PRs that might be legitimate feature enhancements or bug fixes. And you can, if it's been stale, let's say for 3 years, you can kind of go and comment and ask the original creator of the PR if they're still interested in working on it. And if they don't get back, or a lot of times they'll say they're not because it's been several years, you could pick that PR up if you feel so inclined to, and kind of get more involved with the code. It's not exactly what the triage role is, but it is a nice thing to do if you're looking to like actually make contributions to some of these projects that you might find interesting and help.
That's a really good point. Yeah, triage is a nebulous kind of a thing, but it's kind of, I would assume that it's probably safe to, I think it's probably safe to assume that most people don't get involved just because they want to be closing issues. If you do, that's great. That's absolutely, please do. That's great. But triage in general, oh, that's actually my next point, I think, on my little list. Yeah, following up on improvements and PRs and things like that that people have submitted and they went stale, et cetera, or whatever. There's a lot of carry of PRs across 90 repos. But the cool thing about being in the weeds and looking at all this crazy stuff and all the things that are happening in the project itself across all the repos is that you're able to sift through all of it and find the gems of improvements, legitimate bugs, interesting feature requests, forgotten feature requests, and all kinds of stuff that then you can help surface back to the larger group by either picking it up and doing the work yourself or just advocating for it or whatever. You're likely to see, if you start really going through a lot of these issues, a lot of stuff from maybe Doug or any other contributor saying, yeah, that would be interesting to look at, or we should do this someday, or yeah, that really needs to be fixed. But then that was like 3 years ago, 5 years ago or something. So you're able to find stuff. The next section is how to find things to do. And getting in the weeds with all this stuff is a really good way to try to find things to do, because Express is, I don't have a good answer right now for myself of like how to find things to do. I stumble upon things and I try to like hide them away or make a list so I can come back to them later, because there is so much stuff to do in the project, but it's extremely difficult to surface it, partly because there's so many different repos, but also it's just so much accumulation of not properly triaging all the PRs and issues and stuff like that. And so if you do see something that you encounter that you'd like to solve with a PR, like even if it's just a doc update or a feature request that is a good idea or seems like a good idea, et cetera, feel free to open a PR. Feel free to open up a PR as a triager, and like that's highly encouraged, because out of everyone in the world, after a couple of months of doing this, you will actually be pretty well qualified to try to make these decisions for the ecosystem. It's insane, but there's so much context hidden in Express. And if you find something that you want to do, pick it up. Make a PR. It might get closed, or it might change drastically, or someone else might pick it up, but pick it up. Or tell the person to pick it up and then come back after they don't, whatever. Yeah, basically be vocal and curious with triaging. That's kind of a bias towards action. We're still figuring this out. I still have no idea. These are just I'm dominating the time here because I spent like several hours today putting this document together because I care about this stuff. But yeah, be biased towards action and, close an issue if you think it should be closed. It can always get reopened. That's fine. We can talk about this later, but some direction to kind of point people towards for where to get started. I do have some examples. Multer is something that we usually say is a good place to start. I specifically have an issue open asking for front-end examples for Multer, which I can link to all this stuff and give you guys this document later. Don't worry about it now. Glenn probably needs some help with Express Session. We have a discussion in this actual repo that the meeting was posted in, the discussions repo. If you look at the issues, there's a lot of things that we've decided would be a good thing to implement for the org, for the project, and we just didn't. So other people from years, that's always a good place to look for stuff too. I'm going to take a break now because I'm dominating the time and I want to not do that. So if anybody else has anything to add, I'm going to stop sharing and take it.
Okay, so John and I have only met once, just so you know, in Montreal, not Toronto. I haven't been eating the wrong things. I can still remember. And so
we've met at several conferences.
That's true.
Okay.
No, that's true. Was it Austin? No, it was the other side of Vancouver.
We met in Berlin too, I think, but I don't know, whatever.
Oh,
it was
Berlin.
A conference circuit.
Anyway, so we've met occasionally. Berlin, I remember now, and basically what we're after is people that have an interest. And it's okay if you come here and go, this is a bit dry, but trust me, a lot of the work actually is dry. It's much like our day jobs. I'm sorry to say that it's not all glamorous and whatnot. And you must be careful not to get burnt out. Like, don't volunteer to do more than you actually feel comfortable doing. We all have real lives. And that's the problem with a lot of projects. People come in, do a great deal, and then they cannot possibly support that for the rest of their lives. So don't try to. And what's going on?
Yeah, we're at about 20 minutes till time, which
okay.
We definitely want to yield. We definitely want to yield for questions.
Yeah,
I have a whole how to find things to do section. That's not really important. I was going to try to scare you guys by showing you some of my GitHub notifications. But that's something that you guys can figure out. Following all the progress is an intimidating, there's some tricks in that discussion I have that can help you follow the thread of what's happening across 90 repos. We don't need to get into that right now because, whatever, let's just suffice to say it can be crazy. I don't even know what everybody else does. That's just, I shared that stuff because I found it pretty valuable. So we can probably see to questions in a little bit or something. But
yeah, let's see. Just dig in, go have a look, dig in, see if there's a repo you like, see if you just want to sit on one of the main repos and answer questions, look at issues, label them. People will join in. The fact there's only been a few of us doing it and we're all actually quite new should encourage you that, hey, we're real veterans at 2 months or 3 months experience here. We're not. And I think a lot of people are put off because they feel that they're not good enough. Hey, what we've discovered is we meet people and they go, oh yeah, I'm the Mocha maintainer, or I'm the this, and they just seem like regular folks just because they were. Essentially, there's more work to be done than just, creating coming up with new ideas. New ideas, I think, are perhaps something special if you come up with a really good new idea, but most of the work is about keeping it going, keeping the ecosystem vibrant and alive. So we're going to seed. We demand everyone asks questions.
We could also, we didn't do this, but feel free to introduce yourself, whoever wants to.
Hey, hi. My name is Lakin. I work with Glenn, Ryan, and David at American Express.
No.
Hi, everyone.
We work at a small startup, and we don't mention who we work with because I don't know if we have permissions for that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't think about that.
There might be rules about that.
The company that shall not be named.
Yeah, the company that shall not be named. But it's shocking, really, to see that, how few the number of people working on this project. And I think I've been using Express for a very long time. Just to learn that you have about, let's say, 2 people active, well, maybe part-time working on this. So yeah, I'm glad to be part of this. I don't know how much I can contribute, but I think once I get in, I would be able to figure things out. But yeah, glad to be part of this, and we'll see how it goes.
Ryan, introduce yourself.
I'm Ryan. Yeah, so I, like Lakin just said, Lakin, nice to see you, man. It's been a little while. I also work there with Elise, who's on the call, which is awesome. Nice to see you too. I got involved because Glenn told me about it. One of my personal goals was to do more in open source in 2020 and just to get more involved. And this is kind of like Lakin just said, everyone uses Express. If you do node development, you have used Express and a lot of the packages. And when I first started looking into Express and JS HTTP and Pillar.js, I was also shocked at, one, how many repos there were and the sheer importance of so many of these repos, like Path to Regex, like what John was saying earlier, and a lot of other ones, Morgan, other things like that. And I just started kind of going through issues, and I've learned a lot from it. I think it's a great way if you're into node development and you want to learn and help people. It's a really fun thing to do, and when you have the time. So I do it when I can. I've fallen off a little bit the past few weeks, but again, like John was saying, it really is when you have the time in your life that you can do it. Just showing up and being consistent and being a voice for this stuff is really important. If some weeks you can do a lot and other weeks you do little, it doesn't really matter. Just kind of trying to stay in tune. One thing that I found very helpful that, John, I don't think you mentioned, it might be in your doc though, is going and watching all of the repos. I don't know, like maybe we set up another session where we actually like go through kind of some of that, but it will, one is watching the repos, and then 2, if everyone uses Gmail or whatever, we can figure that out, like setting up filters, because it will immediately implode your inbox. But that, even as like a passive way to be like, what's going on in these projects? You'll start getting tons of emails about issues, and a lot of them will be from maintainers like Doug. But you'll start kind of just passively reading your emails about what's going on. You'll start like getting a sense of, oh, I kind of like understand what's actually happening in these projects now, because at the beginning it's like I was really overwhelmed when I first started. I had no idea what to do. So I just kind of started like going through all the different repos in the 3 orgs, seeing what kind of interested me. And some are more natural because like it's Multer and there's like 200 open issues. When you get down to like the JS HTTP ones, which are extremely important, but are essentially like really low level HTTP things that way fewer people are opening issues in those, but you kind of find what interests you. I'd also just posted a link in the chat to like, just if people are interested in like what Triage does, this is just a link of issues that I've done, or the issues that I've commented on in the Express org. And you can kind of take a look. Some are open, some are closed. And you can kind of start reading through. If you wanted to take a look at a few, you'll see like sometimes I help people, sometimes I ask for reproductions. Yeah, that's about it.
That's awesome. That's a really good idea. In terms of, yeah, we've all learned by imitating. I think I started imitating Doug, basically Doug, like the main.
Yeah.
Like it's literally, it blows my mind sometimes where you will sometimes open an issue and 30 seconds later he responds.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
It's truly
that.
mind blowing. It
It's
really
mind blowing. But Ryan,
I
so
learned a
Ryan
lot from
ramped
Doug.
up. Ryan ramped up really quickly. You only started like maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Yeah, something like that. I think February.
And then you had a kid.
Yeah, February.
I don't know how you do it. But yeah, if you want to just get an idea at the beginning, you could definitely read other people's stuff. And also, this isn't the end in terms of you're not like released like now go do stuff. Like we finally have a core. We finally have enough people to have these conversations. This is our first ever actual triage meeting ever. We're gonna hopefully do more, not super regularly because people are busy, but yeah, like this is a beginning. I'm glad that there's people here because finally we have people to talk to about this stuff. So I'm gonna, whoever else.
I can jump in. Like Ryan said, I work with these guys at the company that shall not be named. And I also roped in Dave Taylor, who's on the call. He's on my new team. And then Magdalena, who's at another big company that maybe won't be named. But I'm, interested to be here and haven't done a lot with open source in the past. Interested in getting involved. And also thinking about this phrase that a number of people are using, like keep the community healthy, and thinking about like what that means exactly. Because it seems like something maybe that you guys are familiar with having been in open source for a little bit longer, but whether it's just keeping things churning, making sure eyes are on things, or moving the code along, like thinking about what that really means would maybe be helpful for some of us. If we could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Yeah. I can chime just very briefly on that. Like for me, what I've seen in since I started doing this is some people there are so many, Express has been around for like over a decade, right? Or maybe just about a decade. There are some open issues and open PRs that are several years old with no activity on them. And when some people see that, in a lot of these repos, they start to assume, with no activity, they start to assume that like, oh, Express is dead or the project's dead or whatever. People like to go on Twitter and say those things, which is obviously not the case. But in my opinion, getting people like us who can go in and either close those old things out that need to be closed out and just getting that issue number down from 300 to 150, or actually like helping and responding to these people and showing that there is a lifeblood and activity on these things, in my opinion, is like super helpful for the community.
Nice, that's helpful, thanks.
I'll say my name's Matt. I work for another company that I don't know if I can say. I think I have current coworkers or ex-coworkers that are from the cannot be named other company. So small world. Small, good old programmers. I enjoy open source stuff. One of my goals with my current position was to increase my open source footprint and experience and time. And I'm in Express every day. So when I saw there was sort of a position, an opening to step in, figured it'd be fun, try it out. I'm a core maintainer of Knox, so I'm usually fairly active on that. But figure a little larger ecosystem would be cool to experience.
We love Knox.
Knox is good. I apologize for the major that's going to drop next week.
Just to clear this up, you are not Doug Wilson's brother.
I am not. No. I have no relation to Doug. As far as I know, I mean, maybe he's at a family reunion. I don't know. There's a lot of us Wilsons, unfortunately. There's a lot. Does Doug have a brother named Matt?
He has five
Yes.
brothers named Matt. I'm kidding, and I have no idea. I don't know anything about his personal life.
As far as I know, I don't think I've ever met Doug in person. So I'll say no.
Hey, I'm Dave. So here I'll say hi. Yeah, I just was looking for an opportunity to get involved in open source for a while, and this kind of fell on my doorstep. Thanks to Glenn and Elise for that. So yeah, it's just a good opportunity, hopefully, to learn more about just node development in general and that sort of thing. So yeah, interested to see where this goes.
I'm going to jump in as well. I'm Magdalena, roped in by Elise as well, as she mentioned. I'm here to just listen and hear what this might be and could be about. I currently don't use Express in my day-to-day, but I have been one of those beginner users. So I really appreciated the comment Ryan made earlier, where it's really just about, hey, these people might be new and have questions, and I can very much relate to that. But I can also relate to, let's just guide them instead of solving their problems. So I like that idea. I was wondering, for those of you who have done other open source work before as well, because that is a new world to me, mostly, if there's any general experience with open source that you could share.
Are you asking specifically for just people to share any experience they've had in the past with open source?
Yeah, specifically things that one might want to look out for with open source contributions in general, or triaging.
Mean people. There's a lot of mean people on the internet.
Yeah. Twitter.
Twitter.
So I think one of the things I've noticed is that there's a lot of, how do I put it, ungratefulness. Most of these modules are maintained, built, designed by people in their spare time. And most of the users treat it as if they're a company that they expected to get support from. And I do see some well-known people standing up on Twitter quite a lot saying, well, if you don't like it, go write your own. But I'm going to echo Jonathan's, what he said. I see a lot of like expectation and meanness from, and I think meanness is the right word, from people that have never actually offered to help, but they expect. There's a sort of an expectation now, and I don't think there should be. How this free ecosystem continues, I don't know, because in the end, all of the software will have to be maintained by someone, and mostly it's volunteers at the moment. Even the big projects are composed of smaller bits, and each one of the bits has to be maintained. So I think that's the other thing. Don't expect much gratitude. I think I've received one smiley face ever for the work of, I'm sorry.
Thank you to everyone who works on Express.
I think I've received smiley faces that have been revoked more often after I've asked for working examples.
So I'll go in a slightly different direction. Open source is a thankless job. And what I love about it is the people. Open source is the intersection of technology and people, and that can be really messy. But I'm a self-taught JavaScript developer. I used to be a chef. I used to work in restaurants. Like in 2015, I had my last restaurant job. And so I got into the triage through OpenJS, through the Node.js project, through the Node.js Collaborator Summit, which are maybe things that don't mean anything to you guys. But I was lucky enough in Berlin to go to the Collab Summit, the Node.js Collab Summit, where all the collaborators that build the language of Node.js come together and meet in person. They do it twice a year. It's going to be online this year, so please join. And it was going to be in Austin, but I showed up to that. My work sent me. I was really lucky to get to go. And I got to rub shoulders with people like Glenn and other people in the ecosystem that build the language of Node.js. And they were really, really chill. They were really nice, cool people who were like, there's so much work to be done. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for wanting to help. Here, we want to hear your opinion, and we really want to know what we like. Please help us. There's so much to do. Thank you for showing up. And that's how I got involved in the triage stuff, is through those connections and through those people. I like Glenn a lot. He's a really nice guy. Yeah, right. He's a nice guy that I've gotten to meet in person a couple times and build those relationships. So open source for me is about relationships and the things that people can build together. And so if you're new to open source, I think this triage stuff is great. We really want you here. I'm still new to open source. I haven't been doing this for very long. But like, if you are interested in learning more about it, this is a great place. There's like some support network kind of stuff that we can have as triagers to talk about what we do specifically through these meetings, and there's a discussion forum that I can link to later It's on GitHub basically for triagers. But if you are just dipping your toes in open source with this kind of participation, awesome. I'm glad you're here to anybody. And also there's so many other cool projects that sometimes it's just showing up and knowing people, like having met people from here or there. There's all kinds of cool things you can get involved in, and it's just about showing up. So whatever contribution anybody here can bring, great. I have no idea what I'm doing. Glenn has no idea what he's doing. Ryan has no idea what he's doing, even though he's been doing a really good job. So
no idea.
I don't know. This is what open source is about for me. It's about the relationships and the people I get to meet. So that's why I do it.
Yeah. And I just want to like Glenn was saying, there's a lot of people, like it's a thankless job, and there's a lot of people who will assume that, if you're working in open source, it's like, well, this package should give me this, and like people will get up and hem and haw about why something isn't implemented or why things take so long. And there's those people who can sometimes bring others down and make you feel like frustrated or whatever. But the people who you work with through this, who are actually involved in doing the work, and John's point, like the people who are actually, whether it's Doug and Wes and the people who are writing a lot of these modules and actually maintaining them, or us who are helping in our various ways, I've found in my experience with open source, those people, you can build a lot of, they're really nice people. You can build a lot of relationships. When you get into actually doing the work with people, other people who are also doing the work, it's usually a very positive and nice experience. The negativity can come from people who are users who have various levels of expectations and assumptions about what the people working on the project should be doing. So if you're looking to get into open source, it's a great way, and you'll learn a lot. I personally have learned a ton about what goes into maintaining open source modules, how they're built, how they're released, how you have to think through breaking changes and semantic versioning of really popular packages. Like, you'll pick those things up a lot as you start going through this, and that's a huge a huge benefit to doing this stuff.
Yeah, I have a question on that. Brian here. I'm introducing myself. Heard about the triage opportunity through Glenn as well. So a big shout out and a thank you there, because this seems very interesting. I've made some open source contributions in the past, and they've been significantly smaller scale. You see a problem, you build a tool yourself, maybe with a few other engineers, and you know the whole code base, you know the whole repo. It's yours, greenfield project. You get it together, you solve your own problem, and you open that solution to other folks as well. In light of that, and in contrast, I'd be curious to know how you all deal with the magnitude of all these repos. Do you find yourselves just open to issues with all of the repos, or do you find yourselves kind of focusing on certain repos, delving into that code, learning about it a bit?
I would say, like, one thing is you'd be surprised that, in like Glenn or either Glenn or John were talking about this before, a significant number of these issues don't require that you actually know how the code works.
Right.
It requires that you have a good understanding of Express in general. And let's say you're talking about Multer, which is a file upload middleware. You have a general understanding of like how file uploads work in web development and for the front and back end. You can help navigate people, either pointing them in a different direction or actually giving them direct support through the issue. It doesn't require that you actually know how the true inner workings of Multer work. Some issues, like if they're actual bugs, might require that you kind of like go through and understand the code to some degree. I can tell you that no one on this call, and there's probably very few people besides Doug Wilson, who can actually say that they understand how every single package under Express works. There's not a single person besides him. Maybe there's maybe a few others, but like, if you find something that you're interested in, you're like, I love logging, I love file uploads, like interested in file streaming, dive into Multer and learn those things 100%. But you can be extremely effective here without actually knowing the inner workings of the code.
Gotcha.
And it would be mind-blowingly difficult to know all of them. And it's absolutely not even close to required that you know how all of these modules work, because then that's just like impossible.
So real quick, we are at time. So if anybody wants to drop off, feel free, that's fine. I'm super down to go for like, let's say 15, maybe 20 more minutes. I really try to respect people's time with these kind of meetings, but I'm enjoying this. So if we want to follow a little bit more of a few threads of conversation, I'm happy with that. I'm willing to stay for another 20 to 30 minutes if anybody else wants to stay on, but just want to call attention to time. But to answer that question, Express is extremely humbling. It's very humbling in so many ways, so many frustrating ways. It's a very frustrating project sometimes. It's humbling in that, well, so for one, to answer your question specifically, we often recommend for triagers, pick a repo, get to know it really well. If specifically, if you're interested in one, great, that's awesome. It completely ignore anything you don't want to do. You're a volunteer. Molter is a place like we talk about a lot because it's one of the most active on the org. Molter is used by Express, it's used by Happy, it's used by Koa, it's used by several different frameworks. So there's a lot of happenings there. It's not super complicated. It's not super easy. It's about to release a 2.0, which is a whole other thing you have to learn about or could learn about, etc. But you don't need to be an expert to answer questions, but also like take it as slow as you want. If you want to deep dive because you like it on one repo, do it. That's great. You don't need to have a depth of to Ryan's point, you don't need to have a depth of understanding for most of these. Like 80% of all issues will be just people need to be pointed to some documentation or it's user error, which is great. Like you learn so much about these projects just by helping people who have user error problems. Sometimes you need to know the package a little bit well to know it's user error, but you get to speed. People ask the same questions over and over again, often. So you often will see a lot of repeated stuff. You'll learn a lot. But yeah, so, take it piece by piece, take it slow. We will hopefully have more of these meetings and people can talk about and ask questions. And, if you want to focus on one repo, great. You're more than happy. You're more than welcome to do that. So if you look out at all the things happening across all of the orgs and the only thing you feel like you're qualified to do is label stuff or read or follow, if you have the time to do that, great. If not, part of the project repo, part of the Repo Captain thing that we're starting to implement is that it would be good to have one person per repo who is I'm the one who understands this. So if there's something that is more complicated that rises above, if there's the 20% that's complicated enough that you really need to understand it, you can always ping that person. But also, weirdly enough, sometimes people there's a lot of smart people out there who will correct you. And if you're wrong, that's fine. That's okay. You're giving people free help. If you're wrong, you'll probably feel bad, but ultimately they probably won't care that much. And if they're mad about it, then they can get their free support from somebody else. So.
Truth.
Well put, yeah.
Does anybody else want to introduce that didn't? Or does anyone want to ask any more questions? I don't want to hold anybody beyond what we've agreed to.
Introduce myself quickly. I'm Dave. I'm from the organization that shall not be named. And I'm just waiting until the end to get my free iPad.
Cool. It looks like that's probably it. Unless anybody has any more questions, like I said, I'm happy to sit for another 20 minutes or something and answer any random questions if anybody wants to hash anything out. So a lot of people on this call are not triagers yet. Next action would be in the meeting issue, in the issue for this meeting, which hopefully you know how to find again. It's the Express.js /discussions repo. I posted a link to the pull request that has the instructions for requesting being a triager. That pull request has not landed yet. It probably will at some point, but basically you open up an issue on Express requesting to be a triager. I linked to the part of the doc that kind of shows you what to say. And then somebody, probably Wes, in the next, I'm gonna badger him after this. Someone will add you to the team, and then you'll have permissions and you'll be able to label and close and go wild. But I will also link to my handy dandy tips and tricks, which is so there is a discussions part of GitHub for teams, like a team discussions thing. It's private to the team. And if you have any questions or if you want to talk to other triagers, open an issue there, even if it's just like, what should I do? Or, hey, should I close this issue? If you link to issues in the team discussion, it doesn't ping the issue, meaning no one will know that you're talking about that issue, which is important. So yeah, I don't want to release anybody into just, you're on your own, go, because then you'll probably drown. But yeah, so we'll schedule another one of these meetings. We'll hash that out offline or on async. And yeah, hopefully hope to see more of you guys around the internet, basically. So Glenn, do you have any wise words, any closing, if he's still here?
Oh, no, I'm still, well, I'm hosting a meeting, so I've got to be here. So no, thank you for turning up. To be honest, like, I'm at the same level with, John and Ryan. I was going to these conferences saying, yeah, I'll help. I don't know how. What do you want me to do? And then someone says, yeah, we need help with some of these projects that are not currently in vogue. And we need like long-term help. And everything we think that is in vogue now will be out of vogue sooner or later. And I think that
depends on the out of vogue stuff.
Yeah. But it looks like the ecosystem is going to be huge forever. So it's just one of those things. The software lives a lot longer than people's capabilities to stay and maintain it. So that's why we need an off-ramp. So don't worry, you're not signing up for life. It's not a baby or a dog. There is an off-ramp, and that's something we need to actually codify. And John and I and Wes are on a package maintenance. We're trying to codify what's best for projects, how to get off them, and how to bring other people onto them. With that, I think we're going to conclude this meeting of the first meeting of Triage's meeting. Thank you all for coming, and have a good night, and keep healthy and safe, and practice better social distancing each day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Glenn.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.